got mid valve, we've got base valve, we've got progressive curves, we've done springs.
Rebound.
Now, sure, let's go to rebound. Rebound to me is something like, so I feel like I'm pretty sensitive when it comes to how an engine is running and where the power is and what I need to do with that. But honestly, I'm not somebody who's very sensitive to feeling what's happening with suspension when I'm riding a bike. So when I'm tuning my suspension, things happen really slowly. I'll often ride a bike for 3 weekends in a row and think like, man, I think my rebound might be a little bit fast. And then I'll make a 6-clicker change so that I can really feel, okay, I like this or I don't like this. But that happens really slowly for me, especially with rebound. With compression, I feel it in my wrists.
Yep.
That's like, okay, my arms hurt. I'm like, they're pumping up. That's usually, for me, how I understand it is, okay, I'm going to go less compression. I'm getting bucked around, I'm going less compression. But I have a limited intuitive understanding of how rebound should be tuned when I'm on the bike personally. And I feel like a lot of people are like that, but suspension tuners love to talk about rebound. I'm used to that.
Yeah, and I was the opposite. I think before I really got into it, I would be more compression focused, and I find a lot of people either ignore the rebound or they just try and close it. So back to springs, if we're talking about storing and releasing kinetic energy, the only thing that can act on your rebound circuit is the spring. You can't make your wheel extend faster than the spring will push it out.
Right.
So there is a direct correlation. It is finite that if you have X spring rate, you'll have Y valving. And anything more is too slow and anything less is too fast. Right. And so back to what you said about if we have a very big customer, that's a tough conversation for me too. If they only have a certain amount of money and they want to put springs in their bike, so then we go from a 5.0 shock spring to a 6.2. There's no way the factory rebound can manage those forces. It's a pogo stick now. The compression might feel okay, but the rebound, its sole job is to manage the spring, the kinetic energy being released from the spring. So I will always say that. I'm like, look, just so you know, we need to revolve at a minimum the rebound. And if I'm in there, then I'm already in there. I might as well do it all. But we can do just springs, just so you know, it is going to be a little pogo sticky. And most people are okay with that. They understand it. They don't have the money. But then the other side of it is, let's talk about, while I'm talking, can you flip through that book into damping and find there's a chart that shows rebound as a curve and where the comfort zone is versus where the most traction is. So a lot of times people mistake the purpose of rebound. Rebound and traction are directly connected, 100%. And the slower you make your rebound.
What is the purpose of suspension? We haven't said that. That's page 1.
Right? I guess there's back to our layman's terms versus science too, but layman's terms would be for comfort, I would think. But yeah, traction.
Do you remember what the technical definition is in this book?
I don't.
That's the first thing I read, and I immediately knew that I was going to love this book. The purpose of suspension is to keep the wheels on the ground the most amount of time, notwithstanding supercross whoops.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. That's the total. It doesn't matter what we talk about, compression or rebound. Supercross whoops are the exception.
Is that the one you're talking about? This is velocity. Anyway, continue.
So let's talk about a classic scenario. It doesn't matter if you're on the track or you're on the trail. We've all encountered braking bumps and acceleration bumps, especially highly traveled trails, like let's say Lower Ranks, for example, or Barnharville, whatever. We have a whole bunch of successive bumps entering a corner or exiting a corner. And a lot of people will find that as they hit successive bumps, as they get to the last one, it gets worse and worse, or more harsh and more harsh. And this is where people will, there it is right there. That's the chart I'm looking for. So
do you want me to hold it up as you're talking?
Doesn't matter. I'll tell you when, and we'll hit that point. You'll know.
Okay, cool.
So what happens is when you have successive bumps in a row, if your compression is too soft, it will allow your wheel to get quite deep into the travel. And if your rebound's too slow, then your wheel can't return back to the ground or track the ground properly. So your wheel becomes airborne, and it actually smacks into the face of the next bump. And so you get this whack, 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 whack on these braking bumps or acceleration bumps. And you're like, oh man, it's really kicking. I need to slow my rebound down. And everybody starts winding in the rebound. And that makes the problem worse. Or they say, I need to soften my compression.
I typically make that mistake. That's what I tend to do.
Yep. And so now the wheel can go even further into the stroke with less force and can't get back down fast enough because the rebound's not fast enough. Whether you've closed the rebound or softened the suspension. Where in fact, probably the correct fix is to speed the rebound up so it can track the ground properly and it's not smacking into the face of the next bump as much. And then even as an extreme, we can stiffen the compression so that it's not going up into the stroke as high on each bump either, and it can get back to the ground quicker. So
it can be very counterintuitive.
Very. And I love, like I said, the same earlier in our discussion, where I think you would really enjoy tuning bikes out at the track because you have a closed circuit. They're coming round and round and round. You can just watch them in one certain area. And so I was watching my friend Danny ride one day after we had valved his KTM 350, and going into the sand section of the track, there was a lot of braking bumps and a real big one at the end. And he was actually becoming airborne with his rear wheel over that last bump. So now you have way less control as you're entering the turn.
Because your wheel's not on the ground.
Yeah. And I agree with you. Like my gut said, like either slow the rebound down or soften the compression. And I knew better than to slow the rebound down. So my gut would have said, let's soften it. And it wasn't until I pulled my phone out and filmed them in slow motion and I saw the bike was actually bottoming on the last braking bump. And that's what was making them go airborne. And we just started adding compression damping. No more kick. And it was way smoother. And that's super counterintuitive. You would never make it stiffer to make it softer.